Denise Ellis woke early, her mind already racing with the day ahead. She rose quietly in the calm of her bedroom, sunlight slipping through pale curtains. She moved across the luxurious carpet, slipping her feet into soft slippers. In the mirror, she studied her reflection. Warm brown skin, neatly pressed blouse, and eyes bright with ambition. She drew in a steady breath. Today was important. She had spent weeks preparing a proposal for one of the firm's biggest clients. She wanted everything to be perfect. Downstairs, the kitchen was filled with the quiet hum of machines. Aleste poured steaming coffee into her favorite mug and took a slow sip. The rich aroma grounded her as she reviewed talking points on her phone. Each detail mattered: the client's goals, the market data, the design ideas. She rehearsed phrases under her breath. She bolted the last piece of toast and set the mug aside. A moment of pride warmed Hirsch. She had worked hard to reach this point, yet a slight tremor of nervousness stirred deep inside. Presenting in front of her boss and colleagues always felt like standing on a stage. She stepped into the sleek black car waiting outside. The driver greeted her by name with a respectful nod. As they glided toward Midtown, Denise watched the city wake. Morning light caught on glass towers and traffic buzzed below. She read and reread slides on her tablet, her heart pumped with equal parts excitement and dread. She cared about her work. She cared about how others saw her. She hoped this presentation would show just how capable she was. At the building entrance, Denise paused, smoothing her skirt. She smiled at the security guard, who returned a friendly wave. She stepped into the lobby, where polished marble reflected bright lights overhead. She greeted the receptionist with a calm "good morning" and made her way to the elevator. As the doors closed, her reflection stared back, shoulders straight, chin, high confidence in place. When the elevator doors opened, Denise walked down a long corridor lined with glass walls. On either side, she glimpsed offices and conference rooms. She told herself this was familiar territory. She had worked here for 3 years. She had earned respect. Yet as she approached the large conference room, her pulse quickened. Inside, a dozen colleagues had already gathered. Quiet chatter filled the air. Denise smiled and nodded as she passed. A mix of friendly faces and polite distance met her. She carried her laptop bag and the printed materials. At the head of the table stood Mark Reynolds, her boss. Mark was known for his sharp mind and sharper tongue. He wore an expensive suit and a look that said he expected excellence. Denise placed her materials on the long table and connected her laptop. She felt a moment of calm as the slides appeared on the screen. The first slide showed the client's logo and the words "proposal overview." She clicked through carefully. Confident, the images looked crisp. She glanced up and caught Mark's eye. He offered a slight nod. She took that as permission to begin. She spoke clearly. "Thank you all for joining. Today, I will walk you through our plan to increase the client's market share by 20% in 6 months. First, let's review the key insights." She moved through each point with practiced ease. Analysis of customer trends, recommended strategies, budget breakdowns. The ideas were strong. She paused to invite questions. A junior colleague raised a hand, asking for clarification on one chart. Denise welcomed the chance to explain. She showed how the numbers fit together, and the colleagues smiled in appreciation. For a moment, Denise felt her confidence flourishing. Then Mark cleared his throat. Silence fell. Denise glanced his way. He leaned on the table, arms folded, and frowned at the screen. He flicked to her next slide and studied it as if seeing it for the first time. Denise prepared to answer his question. But instead he spoke in a low voice that carried across the room. "I don't know why we bother with these half-baked ideas. This slide is amateurish at best. Does not reflect the level of work we deliver to top-tier clients." The words hit Denise like ice. Her heart stuttered. She opened her mouth, but the room spun. Colleagues exchanged uneasy looks. Denise's hands shook slightly on the table. She searched for calm. "I'm sorry, Mark, I put a lot of thought into this." She began gently, but he cut her off. "I thought, don't patronize me. We need real results, not your experiments. This is a client that demands precision. Your work here is sloppy." He tapped the screen with a sharp fingertip. Do you even understand what professional standards mean? A hot flush crept up Denise's neck. She tried to steady her voice. I reviewed the data 3 times and consulted the analytics team. If there's an error, I want to fix it. Her words came out soft. They sounded weak even to her ears. Mark's lips curled into a sneer. He waved his arm. Save it. Go back to your desk and let someone more competent lead this presentation. His tone was cold, final. The room went deathly quiet. Denise felt every eye on her. Her cheeks burned. She picked up her materials, her fingers trembling. A distant ringing filled her ears. She wanted to vanish. She turned and left the room, each step heavy on her high heels. As the doors closed behind her, she leaned against the wall, trying to breathe. Her chest felt tight. She slid down until she sat on the polished floor. Tears gathered in her eyes. The humiliation stung deeper than any physical pain. Worked hard, she had earned her place. Yet here in front of the team she respected, she felt worthless. After a few moments, Denise wiped her cheeks with a tissue she retrieved from her purse. She stood, smoothing her skirt. She straightened her back and drew in a breath. She had to get through the rest of the day. She could not let this break. In the small break area down the hall, she found Tanya waiting. Tanya was her friend and confidant at work. Slight and energetic, Tanya always had advice and encouragement. When she saw Denise's face, she rushed forward. What happened? Are you okay? Denise forced a small smile. I was humiliated. She tried to keep her voice steady, but it cracked. He cut me off, said my work was sloppy, told me to sit down. Tanya's eyes widened. She wrapped Denise in a brief hug. I'm so sorry. That was cruel. You know your work is top-notch. She squeezed Denise's hand. Let me get you some water. Denise shook her head. No, I wanted to get back to my desk. Tanya drew in a breath. Okay, but remember, it's not you. It's him. It's unreasonable. Denise nodded, though her stomach churned. She walked back to her desk. Each step felt like wading through mud at her workstation. She opened her laptop and started drafting an email to Mark. She asked politely for feedback on how to improve. She typed slowly, wanting to sound professional, calm. When she hit send, her heart sank. We're worried about how he might respond. Moments later, her email notification pinged. She opened the reply. It was brief, sharp, and full of condescension. He said her work showed she lacked the necessary skills, and that next time she should think twice before wasting everyone's time. Denise closed her eyes. The words burned on the screen. She leaned back and exhaled. This was more than a mistake. This was disrespect rooted in something she could not change. She stared at the office ceiling, white and sterile, and felt a resolve forming in her chest. She would not let this pass. But in that moment, she also felt doubt. Could she stand up to this? Would anyone else care? She glanced around. Others were busy at their desks, pretending to ignore everything. The office hummed with normal activity, but for Denise, time had slowed. She took out her phone and opened a message thread with her husband, James. She wrote, "Something happened today. I need your help." Then she hit send. Her finger hovered over the call icon. But she did not dial. Instead, she packed her bag with quiet care. She needed a moment away to breathe, to think, to decide her next step. The doors of the office felt heavy as she passed through them once more, carrying with her both the weight of humiliation and the first spark of determination, that she would not remain silent. Denise pressed her palm against the cool wall of the corridor, trying to steady the rapid beat of her heart. Her breath came in short, uneven gasps as she stared at the closed doors of the conference room. For a moment, she simply stood there, letting the silence wrap around her like a thick blanket. Every memory of what had just happened replayed in her mind. The harsh words, sneering gaze, the stunned faces of her colleagues. She felt as though the ground had dropped from under her feet. Gathering herself, Denise smoothed her skirt and walked on unsteady legs toward the break room. Through the glass window, she saw Tanya, her friend and confidant, standing by the counter, pouring herself a cup of tea. Denise forced a calm smile as she pushed the door open. The room was small and bright, with steamed milk fogging the edges. Of the kettle, a low hum of the refrigerator filled the space. Tanya looked up instantly. "Hey you," she said, setting the mug down. "What happened in there?" Her voice was soft, concerned. Denise took 2 steps forward and sank into the chair opposite her friend. She clasped her hands in her lap, her fingers twisting the fabric of her skirt. He tore my presentation apart," she whispered. "He said my work was sloppy. He said I wasted everyone's time." Tanya's eyes widened. She reached across the table and put her hand over Denise's. "That's awful," she said. "He had no right." She paused, thinking, "Do you want some water? Or maybe a mint?" Denise nodded, her throat tight. Water would be good. She tried to swallow. The taste of bitterness filled her mouth, the residue of anxiety. Tanya got up and went to the sink, the clink of ceramic echoing in the tiny room. Denise closed her eyes and leaned back, picturing the meeting room again, the long table. The bright projector light, Mark's dismissive sneer. She wondered whether everyone had seen the fear in her eyes, the slight tremble in her voice when she tried to speak up. When Tanya returned with a glass of water, Denise took it with shaky hands. She raised it to her lips and sipped. The cool liquid soothed her a little. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer now. Tanya sat back down. She sighed and looked at Denise, her expression determined. "You know, that was uncalled for. You put in so much work. Your proposals are always solid." She gave Denise's hand a gentle squeeze. "Don't let him get to you." Denise managed a small, grateful smile. "I know, but it still hurts." She set the glass on the table and rubbed her temples. Her head ached, and her chest felt heavy. She looked around the break room, the cheerful posters about team spirit. The bowl of stale snacks in the corner, the kettle steaming on the counter, and felt distant from it all. It was like watching someone else live in a world that she'll no longer belong to. After a moment, Denise stood. "I should go back," she said. "I still have work to finish." She picked up her purse and smoothed her hair. Tanya rose too, giving her a quick hug. "If you need anything, call me." "Seriously," Denise nodded. "I will." She left the break room and walked back down the corridor. Each step felt heavy, like carrying a weight in her chest. Her desk was just outside the conference room, and as she approached, she saw her coworkers bent over their keyboards, pretending nothing had happened. She wondered who else had heard Mark's cruel words, who had felt sorry for her, who had secretly agreed, but no one looked up.
No one offered comfort.
She settled into her chair and opened her laptop. The screen lit her face in the quiet cubicle. Email notifications pinged softly in the background. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She needed to address what happened. She wanted to understand why he was so harsh. She began to type an email. "Good afternoon, Mark. I'm sorry for interrupting earlier. I value your feedback, and I would like to understand where my presentation fell short. Could you please let me know which parts need improvement so I can make the necessary changes? Thank you for your time." She read it over carefully. It sounded polite and professional, she thought. She hesitated, then pressed send. The email floated off into the digital ether, carrying both her humility and her hurt. Denise leaned back and stared at the ceiling tiles, white and uniform, as if they pressed down on her heart. She tried to return to the tasks she had on her to-do list, but every slide she opened, every spreadsheet she viewed, reminded her of Mark's scorn. She clicked through her presentation again, searching for mistakes she could fix. She triple-checked numbers, reread texts, adjusted images, but nothing felt right. She no longer saw the proposal as a proud achievement. She saw it as proof that she wasn't good enough. An hour passed in this fog. The soft hum of the office and the rhythmic tapping of keyboards became a distant drone. Denise realized she hadn't eaten lunch. Her stomach growled faintly. She looked at the clock on her computer. 2:17 p.m. The workday was more than half over, but for her time had slowed down. She closed the presentation and minimized the window. Instead, she opened a new document and began writing notes to herself. Questions she wanted to ask, observations about what had happened. Writing felt safer than presenting. Just then, her phone buzzed. She saw a text from James, her husband. "How did your day go?" A small spark of relief warmed her chest. She tapped her thumb against the screen and typed, "It wasn't good. I'll tell you later." She hit send, then set the phone face down on the desk. She sighed and rubbed her temples. She wanted to call James immediately, to hear his voice, to let him carry away some of the pain. But she worried about covering her phone smoothly without drawing attention. She worried that any sign of weakness would be like a flashing neon sign above her head. She decided to wait until she got home. The afternoon dragged on. Denise picked up a project brief and tried to focus, but each line of text seemed meaningless. Her eyes blurred over bullet points. She closed the document and stared out the window instead. Below, cars and buses moved in streams of color. People bustled along the sidewalk, umbrellas clutched, and briefcases swung. They all seemed busy with their own lives, their own struggles. She wondered how many of them felt as invisible or powerless as she did right now. Suddenly her phone buzzed. Again. This time it was Tanya, checking in. "Are you okay?" Denise stared at the question. Part of her wanted to pour out every word, to let it all rush out in one long confession. Another part wanted to hide everything and pretend that she was fine. She typed back, "I'm hanging in there. Thanks." She set the phone aside. Her computer chimed with an incoming email. She clicked her inbox and saw Mark's reply. Her breath caught. She opened the message. "You clearly lack the necessary skills for this account. Next time, think twice before wasting everyone's time." The words stung like cold steel. Denise closed her eyes. Her throat tightened and sweat broke out on her brow. This wasn't about one mistake, she realized. It was deeper refusal to acknowledge her competence, her years of dedication. She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She blinked, then back and rested her forehead against her desk. She sat there for a long moment, letting the hurt wash over her. Then she straightened her spine and took a deep breath. She opened a new email and wrote to HR, quietly and respectfully, describing what happened. She attached her original presentation, copies of the emails, and a few notes. She ended with, "I appreciate your time and hope we can address this matter fairly." She paused, fingers hovering over the send button, the final resolve. She clicked it. Denise pushed back her chair and stood. Her legs felt shaky, but she forced herself to walk out of the cubicle. She needed fresh air. She headed toward the lobby, feeling a mix of fear and determination. Each footstep echoed in her mind. "I will not stay silent. I deserve respect. I will find a way forward." As she reached the tall glass doors of the building, she took one last glance over her shoulder. The office lights glowed behind her, but she no longer felt trapped in their glare. She stepped outside into the cool, late afternoon air. The city's bustle swallowed her up, and for the first time since mid-morning, she felt a flicker of hope. She would get through this. She would find justice. And she would not let humiliation define her. Denise sat quietly at her kitchen table, the soft glow of the lamp casting gentle shadows across the room. Outside, the city's lights blinked through the window. The distant hum of traffic reminded her she was far from the sterile office, where her world had turned upside down. She pressed her palms together and took a slow breath. She had asked James to meet her here as soon as he could. Now she waited, heart pounding with a mixture of relief and dread. Moments later, the front door clicked open, and James stepped inside. He closed the door behind him and hung his coat on the rack. His tall frame filled the doorway, and Denise felt the familiar warmth of his presence. He moved to her side and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Tell me everything," he said. Softly, Denise rose and led him to the seat across from her. She poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to him. She stared into the clear liquid, gathering her thoughts. "It was terrible," she began. "I spent weeks on that proposal. Thought it was my best work yet. But in the meeting, Mark tore it apart. He called it sloppy and amateurish. He laughed at my ideas and told me to sit down." Her voice trembled as she spoke. James listened without interrupting, his eyes steady and calm. She paused, collecting herself. I emailed him afterward, asking for feedback. He replied that I lacked the skills and had wasted everyone's time. It felt like he was attacking who I am, not just my work. Denise lifted her gaze and saw James's face tighten with concern. He reached across the table and took her hand. I am so sorry, he said. You did nothing wrong. A tear slipped down Denise's cheek. She swallowed hard. I know, but it hurt so much, and I felt so alone in that room. No one stood up for me. She drew in a shaky breath. Scared that this isn't just about one presentation. I've seen him treat others low before. But for me, it felt personal. James squeezed her hand. We will make this right, he promised. I want to understand exactly what happened and why. Then we'll plan our next steps. He tilted his head. Have you saved any of his emails? Meeting notes? Anything that shows what he said? Denise nodded and reached into her purse for her phone. She unlocked it and showed him the thread of emails between her and Mark. Here, she said, pointing to each message. The original proposal, my polite request for guidance, and then his scathing reply. She scrolled further to find the HR acknowledgement. I also sent a note to HR this afternoon. They replied saying they would look into it. Forward and read each line carefully. He frowned as he took in Mark's harsh words. This is unacceptable, he said quietly. He set the phone down and looked at Denise. I want you to write down everything you remember from the meeting. Every word, every look, and any witnesses you think saw what happened. Denise nodded and pulled out a notebook and pen from her bag, while Denise began to write. James stood and moved to the counter. He brewed fresh tea, the steam curling up into the air, filling the room with a soft scent of herbs. When he returned, he handed her a warm mug. Denise wrapped both hands around it, feeling the heat seep into her fingers. She continued to write, her pen moving quickly across the page as memories surface Mark's sneer. The sharp angle of his eyebrow, the way he tapped the screen, the steady silence of her colleagues. She wrote until her hands stung and her throat grew hoarse. When she finally looked up, James met her gaze. Thank you, he said. This will help us build a clear picture. He took her notebook and thumbed through it, nodding. Next. I want copies of any relevant documents. Your presentation slides, emails with the analytics team, the original data reports. Do you have those saved? Denise reached into her laptop bag and pulled out a USB drive. I backed everything up. Here, she said. She handed it to him. All the files are there. James smiled, a warm reassurance in his eyes. Good thinking. He placed the drive in his jacket pocket. Once we have all the evidence, I will talk to HR and the board. They need to see this pattern of disrespect. This isn't just about you, it's about fairness and respect in the workplace. Denise set her mug down and looked at him gratefully. I only want them to see that I deserve a chance. I want my reputation back, and I want this to stop for anyone else who faces this. She paused. I don't want revenge, just want justice. James nodded. I understand, and I'll help you get that. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You are talented and hardworking. You deserve respect. We'll make sure they know that. For the next hour, they sat together, planning every detail. They decided Denise would request a formal meeting with HR and their department head. James offered to accompany her if she wished, but Denise insisted she wanted to stand on her own. 2 feet, James agreed, promising to be there before and after for support. They also agreed to talk to a trusted mentor at the firm who could advocate on Denise's behalf. Denise jotted down names of colleagues who had shown kindness in the past, people she felt she could trust. As they worked, Denise felt the heavy weight in her chest begin to lift. She realized she was not alone. She had James's unwavering support. She had evidence. She had a plan. And most importantly, she had her own courage. She looked at her husband, the man she relied on for strength, and felt a surge of hope. When the clock on the wall ticked past 9, James stood and stretched. He gathered the notebook, the USB drive, and Denise's phone where she had saved everything. Let's get some rest, he said. Tomorrow's a big day. He kissed her forehead and offered his arm. Denise slipped her hand into his and stood. She felt steadier than she had in days. They walked to the door together, and Denise paused to look at the small kitchen table now littered with papers and pens. She smiled. The battle ahead was still daunting, but here, in this warm room, she had reclaimed her dignity. She had turned humiliation into action. As they stepped out into the quiet hallway, Denise lifted her chin. The office building loomed outside, dark now except for a few late lights flickering. She took James's arm and breathed in the cool night air. She knew the path would be hard, but she also knew she had the strength and the support to walk it. And with every step, she felt her resolve grow stronger. Denise arrived at the office early the next morning, the sky still tinged with pale blue before sunrise. She wore her favorite navy blazer and a crisp white blouse, her hair neatly pulled back. In her hand, she carried a slim leather folder holding printed copies of her notes and the evidence she and James had gathered. As she stepped into the lobby, she felt a flutter of nerves, but also a growing sense of determination. Today would be different. She rode the elevator to the top floor where her department was located. The doors opened, and she walked down the familiar corridor. The lights overhead cast a soft glow on the polished floor tiles. Few colleagues who offered polite nods. Some smiled in recognition, and she smiled back, hoping to convey quiet confidence. At the end of the corridor, the glass walls of the main conference room reflected her image. She paused for a moment, took a steadying breath, and entered. Inside, HR representatives Ms. Patel and Mr. Graham sat on one side of the long table. On the other side sat Mark Reynolds, looking cool and composed. He glanced up at Denise as she entered, his lips tightening slightly. Denise walked to the head of the table. She placed her folder on the surface and nodded in greeting. "Thank you all for meeting with me," she said, her voice steady. She saw the slight surprise in Mark's eyes as she took a seat next to the HR team rather than opposite him. Ms. Patel began the meeting. "Denise, thank you for coming. We received your email and the documentation. We want to hear your account." She gestured to Denise to continue. Denise sat up straight and opened her leather folder. She removed her written notes and held them neatly. "Last Wednesday, during our team meeting, I presented a proposal for our client. During that meeting, my boss, Mark, made several comments that were humiliating and disrespectful." She glanced at Mark, who met her gaze evenly. Breathin continued. "He called my work sloppy and amateurish. He laughed at my ideas in front of the team and told me to sit down. Afterwards, I emailed him asking for guidance. He replied that I lacked the necessary skills and had wasted everyone's time." Ms. Patel nodded and turned to Mark. "Mark, can you share your perspective on what happened?" Mark adjusted his jacket and leaned back. "I did not humiliate anyone. I was evaluating the quality of the work. My comments were direct because this account demands excellence." I spoke to Denise as I would to any member of the team. His tone was measured, but Denise felt a hint of defensiveness behind it. "Ms. Patel made a note on her tablet. We have reviewed Denise's presentation slides, her emails, and her notes from that meeting. Denise, would you like to present the evidence you gathered?" Denise reached into her folder and handed out printed pages to everyone. The sheets included transcripts of Mark's emails, her own polite follow-up, and copies of her notes from the meeting. She cleared her throat. "These pages show exactly what was said. I wrote each line as soon as I could after the meeting, when it was fresh in my mind. My original proposal also shows that it was carefully researched and well organized." Mr. Graham flipped through the pages. "Thank you, Denise. This is helpful." He looked up at Mark. "Mark, is there any record of Denise making errors in data or missed deadlines that would justify such harsh comments?" Mark opened his own folder, but it was nearly empty. "No, she has met every deadline. But on this presentation, I saw errors in the budget calculations." He tapped the folder. "That is why I pointed out the flaws." Denise leaned forward and spoke calmly. "I double-checked every number with the analytics team. No errors were found. Even consulted the lead analyst, who confirmed the figures." She glanced at the printed email from the analyst, which she had included in the evidence. "Here is her confirmation."
Nice.
Mr. Graham read the analyst's email. He nodded slowly. I see. This suggests the work was accurate. Mark, why did you not mention these concerns privately or seek clarification before criticizing her publicly? Mark shifted in his chair. I believed a candid discussion during the meeting would highlight the importance of precision for the entire team. He paused. I did not intend to humiliate, intended to set a high standard. Ms. Patel exchanged a look with Mr. Graham. Setting a high standard is important, she said gently, but it is also important to provide feedback in a respectful manner. Public shaming can create a hostile work environment, Denise felt. A surge of relief. The HR representatives were acknowledging her experience. She pressed on. I understand we need to maintain standards, but my concern is the tone and method of feedback. Being called amateurish and told I lacked skills felt personal. It undermined my confidence in my relationships with teammates. She placed her written request for a respectful feedback policy on the table. It was a short proposal she had drafted with James, guidelines for constructive criticism, private one-on-one feedback sessions, and diversity and inclusion training. Ms. Patel picked up the document and read it. This is thoughtful, she said. We can incorporate these suggestions into our policies. She looked at Mark. We will also need to address this incident specifically. Denise, how would you like to proceed? We can offer a formal apology, a written warning for Mark, or mediation sessions. Denise considered for a moment. She did. Not want to punish Mark or ruin his career? She wanted respect for herself and for everyone? I would appreciate an apology from Mark, a commitment to follow the new feedback policy, and a mentoring opportunity so that team members can learn. Constructive feedback methods. She looked at Mark, and I would like to continue working on projects without fear of public humiliation. Mark cleared his throat. He folded his hands. I can apologize. My intention was not to humiliate Denise. I regret that my words caused her distress. He paused, then said quietly, I will attend training on giving constructive feedback and mentor a junior colleague as part of my personal improvement plan. Denise nodded, accepting his words. Ms. Patel smiled faintly. Very well, we will. Draft a formal apology and agreement. We will also set dates for the training sessions and policy rollout. Mark, you will meet with HR to finalize your improvement plan. Denise, HR will support you in any way needed, Mr. Graham added. We will follow up in 1 month to ensure these steps are completed and the office environment has improved. Denise sat back, feeling a lightness in her chest she had not felt in days. She looked at the HR team and then, at Mark, she heard the soft click as Ms. Patel closed her tablet. She realized this was the turning point, the moment when humiliation gave way to fairness. Before the meeting ended, Denise spoke again. Thank you all for listening and for taking this seriously. I looked forward to helping build a respectful workplace. Her words were calm and hopeful. As the group rose, Denise gathered her folder. Mark stood and offered his hand. Denise accepted it. He said quietly, I'm sorry, Denise. I will do better. She nodded, her smile genuine. Q, she replied. Walking out of the conference room, Denise felt the corridor seem brighter. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the hum of life in the office sounded welcoming rather than hostile. She passed colleagues who gave her encouraging nods and even a few words of congratulations. Back at her desk, Denise placed her folder in a drawer. She opened her laptop and saw an email from HR, confirming the agreements and the upcoming training. She felt gratitude for the support she had received. She took a sip of lukewarm coffee, grateful that the bitterness of the last days was giving way to something more hopeful. That afternoon, Denise returned to her work with new energy. She drafted ideas for the training program she had been asked to help create. She reached out to the junior colleague Mark Woodmentor, offering to share what she had learned. Each email she sent felt like a step toward transforming the office culture she cared about. When she left work that evening, she paused in the lobby and looked back at the building. She felt proud of how she had handled things. She had stood up for herself with dignity, asked for fairness, and helped initiate change. She knew the work would continue, but she also knew she had made a difference. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in warm hues. Denise walked to her car, her folder under her arm, feeling a sense of triumph and possibility. She thought of James waiting at home, eager to hear how the meeting had gone. She smiled, realizing that humiliation was replaced by empowerment. She would never forget the pain of that morning, but she would carry forward the lessons of courage, respect, and the power of speaking up. And with that, Denise drove into the fading light, ready for the next chapter, one in which she and her colleagues would build a workplace in which everyone could thrive without fear. Denise stepped out of the office building into the soft glow of the late afternoon sun. She felt a lightness in her chest, as though the weight of the world had lifted. In the days since the meeting with HR, she had seen real change take place. Small acts of kindness and respect had spread through the office like ripples in water. As she walked toward the parking garage, she thought about how far she had come in just 1 week. On Monday, after the HR meeting, Denise had returned to her desk to find a bouquet of flowers from Tanya, with a note that read, "You showed us all how to stand tall. Well done." The simple gesture made Denise smile and reminded her that she had people cheering for her. Others stopped by to say they admired her courage. Even some colleagues she barely knew offered a quiet word of praise. The hum of the office felt warmer, more welcoming. People spoke to each other with new kindness, and the pitch of voices seemed gentler. By Tuesday afternoon, the new respect and inclusion training began. Denise had volunteered to help lead one of the sessions, sharing her own story in simple terms. Standing in front of her coworkers, she described how words could hurt, how public shaming could damage trust, and how respectful feedback could lift others up. She used clear examples like asking for a private conversation instead of calling someone out in a group. As she spoke, she saw nods around the room. Faces that had once been tense now looked open. After the session, several people came forward to thank her and share their own experiences. Denise realized that her pain had become a catalyst for growth in others. Meanwhile, Mark Reynolds fulfilled his promise. He met with HR for his feedback training and later apologized again in the department meeting. His voice was sincere as he expressed regret and outlined ways he would change his approach. He invited Denise to work with him on giving feedback, and she agreed. Together, they drafted a short guide for managers, 5 key steps to give feedback that is clear, kind, and constructive. The guide was posted in the team area and shared company-wide. Denise felt proud seeing her ideas become part of the firm's culture. By midweek, Denise's inbox contained emails not only about her usual projects, but also invitations to join new initiatives. The company had created a respect committee, and she was asked to serve as a member. The committee's mission was to monitor office culture, propose improvements, and ensure that respect and inclusion remained priorities. Denise accepted, knowing she could help prevent others from facing what she had endured. Working on the committee with colleagues from different departments, she felt a sense of purpose beyond her own role. They brainstormed ways to celebrate diverse voices, to hold regular check-ins on team morale, and to create safe channels for feedback. At home that weekend, Denise and James sat on their balcony overlooking the city skyline. The night air was cool, and small lights twinkled in the distance. James poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to Denise. She held the glass and looked at him, feeling gratitude that ran deep. "I can hardly believe how much has changed," she said softly. "Just a few days ago, I thought I would have to hide my bruised heart. Now I'm helping shape the company's future." James smiled and raised his glass. "To your strength and your voice." They clinked glasses, and Denise drank, feeling warmth spread through her. Back at work on Monday, Denise found that her role had shifted in other ways too. Her manager announced that she was promoted to Senior Director of Client Strategy, effective immediately. The promotion recognized not only her skill, but also her leadership in fostering a respectful workplace. Denise's hands trembled as she accepted the news and her new business card. Walking through the office clutching the card, she received congratulatory smiles and pats on the back. Even the security guard in the lobby offered his respects. Felt surreal to be celebrated after having been humiliated. In her new position, Denise now oversaw a larger team and higher-profile clients. She met with her team to outline her vision, to pursue excellence while ensuring every voice was valued. She emphasized clear communication, regular one-on-one check-ins, and a culture where questions and ideas were welcomed. She encouraged her team to share feedback openly and promised to listen without judgment. As she spoke, she remembered how it felt to be silenced. She vowed never to let anyone under her leadership feel small or unheard. One afternoon, Denise received an unexpected message from another department head. Could she mentor a young analyst struggling with confidence? Denise replied eagerly. Meeting with the analyst, she shared her own story, edited for brevity, and offered practical tips on preparing presentations and speaking up. She showed the young analyst how to practice in front of a mirror, how to anticipate tough questions, and how to ask for feedback early. The analyst beamed with gratitude and left the meeting feeling empowered. Denise realized that helping someone else find their voice was one of the most rewarding parts of her journey. Months later, during the annual company meeting, the CEO spoke about the year's achievements. With a proud smile, he cited the new Respect and Inclusion training, the improved feedback policies, and the launch of the Respect Committee. Then he announced a new annual award, the Voice of Respect Award, to honor an employee who championed dignity and inclusion. As Denise watched from her seat, the CEO called her name. She rose, stunned. Applause filled the room. She walked to the stage with her heart pounding. The CEO handed her a small plaque engraved with her name and the words "Voice of Respect." Looking out at her colleagues, Denise saw faces lighting up. She remembered the fear and shame she had felt and knew that every painful moment had led to this triumph. Back at her desk after the ceremony, Denise placed the plaque on her shelf. She glanced at it often, remembering how far she had come. The office no longer felt like a place of judgment. It was a community where she and her teammates could grow together. She reopened her laptop. She had one new email. A thank you. From HR, acknowledging her contributions to the firm's culture, she replied with a simple, "Thank you for believing in me." That evening, Denise returned home and found James waiting with takeout from her favorite restaurant. They ate on the balcony, talking about the day's events and dreams for the future. Denise shared plans for a leadership workshop she was designing and a charity event to support women in business. James listened, proud and supportive as always. When they finished dinner, Denise leaned against him, looking out at the city lights. She felt joy, not just for her personal success, but for the change she had helped bring about. As she climbed into bed, Denise reflected on her journey. She remembered the humiliation, the tears, and the silence. She remembered the moment she decided to stand up, the strength she found in sharing her story, and the support she received from those who cared. She realized that dignity was not something given. It was something claimed by speaking up, by seeking justice, and by treating others with kindness. She drifted to sleep with a sense of peace, knowing her voice mattered and that she would continue to use it to make the world a kinder place. And so Denise's story ended, not with the cold sting of humiliation, but with the warm glow of transformation. She had turned a painful moment into a force for good, reshaping her workplace and inspiring others. Her journey showed that courage and respect could overcome even the deepest wounds, and that when one voice stands up for justice, it can lift many in its wake.